Story of Seasons series has been around for quite a long time and has long been considered the pioneer of the farming game genre, despite its somewhat convoluted story here in the West. And I always enjoyed its calm and pleasant atmosphere, but what happens when you take that and merge it with one of Japan's most iconic series of all time? That's what we'll be checking out today with the release of Doraemon, Story of Seasons, Friends of the Great Kingdom. This is a standalone sequel to the first Doraemon Story of Seasons game, released in 2019 as a collaboration between Marvelous and Bandai Namco, with the latter strongly pushing the Doraemon brand in the Western territory. Despite that, it's hard to compare it with the main series since, aside from the characters, it's otherwise a tale of its own because, for the majority of the time, you'll be playing as his friend Nobi, with Doraemon himself taking a back seat and only appearing during cutscenes or if you enable a certain mode, but more on that later. The story starts when Nobi and his friends all run away from home after a disagreement with their parents. Nobi suggests that they should travel to another world beyond the stars, and so, with the help of Doraemon, they take off in a rocket straight to a planet that looks very much like Earth, where they meet a young boy named Loomis. After treating his wounds, he introduces them to an old, rundown farm that his late father used to take care of. Unfortunately, things don't go well for the quintet as the Queen of the Kingdom summons them. She confiscates Doraemon's gadgets because of their potential threat to the kingdom, which regrettably includes the spaceship needed to return to their home planet. In an attempt to regain the Queen's trust, you'll have to revive the farm and get friendly with the townspeople so that Her Highness, in all her mercy, returns all your stuff. Regarding the gameplay, well, it's Story of Seasons. There's not much to say here. This might sound negative, but it's just like how the series has always presented itself. You have the farming chores, which are watering your crops, taking care of your animals, and shipping your products, and alongside all that, you have mining, fishing, and catching bugs. I will say though, I was happily surprised that certain elements that have been omitted from the latest mainline titles nowadays are back, in particular bug catching, which we haven't seen since Story of Seasons' Trio of Towns. Compared to the first game, a couple of quality of life improvements were made, with one of the significant changes being adding a to-do list, letting you know what you need to do next to progress the story. Further, the bulletin board menus will now properly give you the business hours of vital stores and event start times, allowing for easier time management. The art style also remains the classic watercolor style painting, but I found the typography choices this time around much better when looking at screenshots of its predecessor. However, not everything is roses and butterflies, especially regarding the in-game map, which is initially very confusing. Since it uses a fixed perspective, some of the paths in game don't quite look how they do on the map, so it might take a while for you to understand where each path leads. Moreover, there's also the frustration you get with your pitiful 10-item slot bag, which will fill up alarmingly fast. Of course, both those points can be mitigated later, with the former having an unlockable Doraemon gadget that helps, and the latter being upgradable by spending a pretty penny at the general store. Still, it will make the early game a bit frustrating at first. It's worth noting that although the to-do list is now an option, the world is your oyster. There are no time limits or deadlines to add unneeded pressure. You can spend your days idly for as long as you need without worrying about requirements or a looming bad ending over your head if you take too long, adding to the quaint and chill nature that the Story of Seasons titles never fail to deliver. Another nifty addition is the offline multiplayer mode. Connecting to controllers allows a second player to control Doraemon while you control Nobi. This allows for greater efficiency in doing farm tasks, but what's worth noting is that Nobi and Doraemon share stamina. So while you can get tasks done far quicker with a second player, you both need to consider that factor unless you want to both end up in the clinic from exhaustion. Time flows a bit differently when compared to its predecessor. Initially, 1 second would equate to 1 in-game minute, but in Friends of the Great Kingdom, that was slowed down to 2 seconds per in-game minute instead. As a result, you'll undoubtedly have a lot of free time in the game's early stages, with your bottleneck being only your stamina and the aforementioned tiny bag at first. Thankfully, as you upgrade your tools and sell crops, you'll mostly be able to mitigate those issues. Additionally, once you get to a further point in the game, you can see how Doraemon's gadgets change the gameplay flow. For example, you get the Anywhere door, which you can use to warp anywhere within the map, a rain cloud that will water the crops for you, and even a flute that will adapt Nobito to swim underwater, broadening the number of places you can explore. With various gadgets to obtain, it puts the whole fact that Doraemon has a gadget for pretty much everything, as seen in his cartoons. Due to the collaborative nature, another feature from the mainline games is absent: romance. Or at least not in a sense that you might be used to if you've played any Story of Seasons games. But that works to its advantage because not everyone is hyper-focused on romance. Not to mention, it wouldn't really work considering the youthful protagonist. However, you can befriend the townspeople and enjoy festivals together relatively easily. Before I had even reached the 15th day of spring, Loomis was already on his way to a green heart, and I didn't even give him that many gifts. Doraemon Story of Seasons Friends of the Great Kingdom is an excellent sequel to an already delightful game, taking what its predecessor already did marvelously and improving on it even further with more locations to explore. Even if you don't know a single shred of the Doraemon series, don't worry, I don't either, you can still enjoy the cute interactions between Nobi and his friends since it's fundamentally Story of Seasons, with a couple of tweaks and enhancements to fit the aesthetic. Noisy Pixel is giving Doraemon Story of Seasons Friends of the Great Kingdom an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to check out the full review at noisypixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to deliver news, reviews, previews, and more. Please subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.